So the technique that you guys are seeing me do on and off here, the spline modeling technique, I rely on this pretty heavily. Um, Understand though too that I'm not going to go in and clean up all of this geometry that I should probably actually end up cleaning up. You are going to need to do that though, depending on how the mesh exports or triangulates when you send it over to Unreal. Honestly, the safest way to do it is to make sure everything is either a triangle or a polygon, and to make sure you know where all the edges go. Sometimes if you're pressed for time, that's kind of a hard way to work. So you can export it and see how it works, which is typically the way I kind of do things. So I'll leave this stuff in this weird max-centric state until it becomes a problem, and then I'll fix it. Again, I know that that may not be conventional to what you've been told, or maybe that's not conventional to how you work. I'm just suggesting it because, from my experience, it works pretty well. It doesn't catch everything. There are times I got to go in and clean the stuff up, and yeah, you just do it and you fix it. But the time savings and kind of waiting until it's a problem, at least in this case, is pretty good. And environment art is very different than character art in terms of the topology, especially because of vertex translation. Especially because we're not tessellating this stuff. We kind of get away with a lot more than what we typically would for characters. Environments and characters are two different things. I cannot tell you the amount of artists that I've had who've been like, oh, we got to do this, got to be all quads, got to be all triangles. And it's like, why? It's like, well, that's what the character guys do, or that's what I've been told for film. And those are all great, reasons of doing stuff. But we need to kind of look at our stuff a little bit more contextually, and we kind of need to examine our stuff a little bit more. Another thing too you're going to notice is I'm not going through and cutting everything in, and I'm intentionally not doing that for a number of reasons. A, it's going to keep my triangle and my vertex count down, which is super important. Again, save your stuff where you can. Delete the unnecessary faces where you can. It's also going to make it a little easier to UV map. The flip side of that is there's going to be some texel spacing that's lost, right? There's going to be some texel spacing that'll be occupied via the UV unwraps that'll be covered up, versus that'll be covered up because of the overlapping assets. And again, this is something that you kind of judge and you kind of play by ear. But again, this is at least based off of what I've seen and what I'm doing. It's okay. Like the trade-off is minimal versus the gains in speed that I'm going to get. Also, like I said, I look at a lot of different concept reference and that kind of stuff from everywhere online. I have folders from Prometheus, from um, just a bunch of different places, from all sorts of different concept artists all over the world and stuff. So I really appreciate everyone posting their stuff online. So we, get to share and get to pull the stuff from reference. If you guys see stuff that, um, that you've done in here, please let me know. I'll give you guys credit for it. I try and give credit to people who I know have done the work and that I'm using their work, but also know, like the stuff and the techniques that I'm learning and explaining to you. Not all of these are mine. A lot of this stuff is a culmination of a lot of knowledge that I pulled from very talented people. So, I don't want you guys to take this course and think, oh, Dave knows all this stuff. No, Dave's learned this stuff from other people or from trial and error. And I would say that 99.9% of the CG artists out there do the exact same thing. So it's important that we, call that stuff out. Again, like I said, I'm modeling this stuff out. Um, Slightly higher resolution than what you would for previous generations. Again, this isn't a film asset. I can't go crazy. I can't smooth everything. I can rely on object surface normals to kind of go through, smooth those surfaces out, because it's definitely going to help. Um, It's definitely going to help things out as much as it can. The nice things about using the surface normals is, and I've said this previously and I'll say it again, is it's not impacted by MIP mapping, which is, when textures get smaller to fit into memory. So again, surface normals are really useful. Uh, Here's a hint: your normal map is altering the surface normals on a pixel shader level, hence the name normal map. Makes sense. It all comes full circle. For this course, or at least for this first section, we're not diving into heavily onto normal maps. I want to kind of save that for the next section. I want to dedicate a fair amount of time to that because it's a very complicated, not very complicated, but it's an involved process that a lot of artists have some problems with, and a lot of guys have a lot of questions of. So we're going to talk about how we optimize and how we make normal maps and how we do high poly and low poly modeling and all that good stuff coming up. But for this course, again, we're going to try to rely as heavily as we can on surface normals. And right now, like I said, I'm just playing with stuff. I'm playing with forms. I'm not freaking too much out on any one thing. I'll test stuff, see if it works. I'm going to be continually iterating on this stuff, okay? As I drop this stuff into Unreal, I'm going to pull it back out. I'm going to add art. I'm going to remove art. I'm going to adjust composition and that kind of stuff as I'm going. I'm not married to anything at this point. My goal is to iterate fast and to fail fast, and I want to get people's eyes on this. Thinking of like I'm in a production, I want to get people's eyes on this. I want to get their feedback. I want to hear what they got to say.